So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to our unscripted, unplanned, casual conversation on the whole fascinating subject of hotel distribution, sales, marketing, loyalty, e-commerce, and whatever else comes into our head over the next hour or so. I'm very, very glad to be here today with Lennert from Citizen M. Somebody who I've known for a very, very long time. I was trying to actually figure out where we first met there, Lennert, at some stage, but I couldn't figure it out. Lennert is one of the, I was going to say the few people, but I better not get myself in trouble here. He's one of the people who I think in the hotel industry really understands what's happening in distribution, what the latest trends are, and is able to actually apply them in the very innovative and now very, very successful company called Citizen M. So my name is Peter O'Connor. I'm based in Australia, but work quite extensively in Europe. And we're going to have a great conversation over the next 45 to 50 minutes. So Leonard, maybe you, for the purpose of this conversation, because obviously I know you, but maybe some of the people viewing this don't, how about you give us like the 30-second introduction to who you are, what you do, and why I'm having this conversation with you.
Wow, in 30 seconds, that's a lot, Peter. Thanks for the...
Okay, I'll give you 50.
Thanks. First 10 already gone. So my name is Leonard Young. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Citizen M Hotels. We are a owner operator in the hospitality space, and we build cool hotels in the big cities of the world. I've been with Citizen M since its beginning. I think Peter, to kick it off, as an owner operator, you are forced to understand all the dynamics of the distribution landscape. Unlike, if you're just doing part of, what entails a hotel, either being a management company or a brand, where you understand your part of it. But we're always forced to understand everything that's going on. I think that's why we're having this conversation. That's why you and I connected over a decade ago, if not more, maybe 15 years, probably on some kind of conference where you were speaking, and probably you were provocative, and that triggered me, being Dutch. And we like to be provocative as well. So nice to be on this show together with you, Peter.
Perfect. And just to give you a little bit of my background, as I said, I'm a professor at the University of South Australia. For about 25 years, I was based at Essex Business School in France. So I'm an academic, but at the same time, I'm very, very connected with the industry. I work with a company called Focusrite, which is an internet analyst company, which looks specifically at online travel. And I've worked with many of the hotels and hotel companies, particularly in the European market space, talking about distribution, online marketing, and social media issues. So between the two of us, I think we've got a fair set of opinions about what we think works. I was going to say a fair knowledge, but it's definitely a set of opinions because nobody's always right. I suppose to start off the conversation, Leonard, maybe we could talk a little bit about the recovery. How do you see the recovery happening at the moment? Do you think that things are going to get back to normal relatively quickly, or how's it happening? Is it being leisure fed? Is it being corporate fed? And will we ever get back to the kind of the record year that for most people it was 2019?
Yeah, it's a set of questions, and I think I'm going to mix it with a couple of facts and then later on some opinions. I don't think recovery has started yet, to be honest. If you look at the amount of friction that's still in place for people to freely travel, unless you are some kind of local hotel that is somewhere where there's no disturbing of people getting to you, so your demand actually using the supply, then I think we're still being hindered quite a bit with these travel restrictions. You can, in most countries now, go freely to restaurants, so they can start talking about getting fully recovered. But I think in the in the big cities of the world, these where we operate, but also in the main countries, if you read the news, yeah, I still have to send a letter to the ambassador of the United States in the Netherlands why I'm a person of national interest to be able to travel to the States, and then wait for 8 weeks before I get a permission granted to go to the States. And so I think the predominant factors are still not in place that we can talk about anything that we're currently seeing that it makes sense. Of course, if you look at it from a hotel P&L perspective, there's things already happening, and there's already a lot more things happening than a year ago. And so year over year, you're really seeing 100, 200, 300% increases in both leisure, but there's also some local business. Yeah, I would say especially, of course, in the US, where domestic travel plays an important role. Yeah, people are freely traveling throughout the US. It's like a watermelon. If you get in, it's hard to get in, but if you're in, it's smushy. You know, you can go without any tests, without any restrictions. You just wear a face mask and you go from New York to San Francisco, just like the old days. And the airports are full. I think the US is only 10 to 15% behind 2019 levels when it comes to domestic travel. And so there you see already a big indication that people are willing to jump on a plane. People are wanting to connect. But everything that you currently see in our numbers, I would say, is either domestically fed or leisure fed. The big companies are still holding their employees back, most of them, especially in America, especially, you know, when, you might have lawsuits if people come back with a COVID infection, if they're on business travel. They're still holding back. And I think, you know, those are big chunks of business that are still not have not returned in our business mix. Just like conferences, I was at the IHIF in Berlin a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not sure what the total capacity was, but it looked like an old school conferences with face masks. And it looked a bit weird if you've seen the last decade of conferences. But it's good to see those things happening, but they're not happening at scale yet. So we're missing travel, we're missing companies, and we're missing conferences. And other than that, people have shown in their private life they're more than willing to travel, and that I think is a good symptom, to understand when recovery is done. We assume that's going to be 2024 on average. If you look at most of the cities where you're back to 2019 levels.
Yeah, I'm going to share two things about corporate travel, which I think are really interesting, because I agree with you that the recovery, or the limited recovery that we're seeing in many countries, it's primarily leisure, it's primarily domestic, which has implications obviously for distribution, as we'll talk about in a few minutes. But I'm going to share two things which I thought were really, really fun. One of them is, in one of my lives, one of the things I do is help people to organize conferences and put together panels for conferences and so on. And I was doing this recently, and to protect the innocent, I'm not going to say which conference it was or which company it was, but I reached out to two very large international hotel chains to get speakers to appear on these panels. And normally these guys would be jumping at the bit, trying to actually get on these panels and get the visibility in front of the audience. And both companies came back to me and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't do any international travel until the end of 2021. And I just thought it was ironic that these two major international hotel chains, who are telling people, please come to our hotels, it's safe, we're saying our executives cannot travel until the end of 2021. So I think that's quite ironic. And then the second thing, obviously, corporate travel. I'm not convinced corporate travel is ever going to come back the way it was. People have got too used to the convenience of being able to jump on a Zoom meeting and then go an hour and a half later and play with their kids, rather than spend a day going somewhere and a day going back. So I think we're going to see a different pattern of corporate travel emerge. Instead of like short trips, I think we're going to have longer trips where people will compress a lot into a couple of days. But those longer trips they're probably going to be combined with leisure travel, I think, and they're going to happen a lot less frequently. And this has big implications for the type of product that we offer and so on, and the amenities and the facilities that we provide in our hotels.
Yeah, so I fully agree, Peter. And I think what you're saying is less meaningless short trips, more meaningful longer trips, and it's a good thing. If you're in the airline business, then you're worried because you get paid on the flight. But if the flight is longer, if the amount of passengers are less and people are staying longer, that's actually good for hotels, good for our profitability, because a longer stay costs less than a one-night stay where you have a full clean, of course. And it's that trend, and I think that's also where we're going to put our eggs in that basket. Is going to help us in the end, because if you look at Citizen, we're always in the great locations in the city. It's a place where you want to be both from a city trip perspective, but also from a business perspective. And there's always some exceptions, but most locations, they are suited for that. And they're actually places where you want to be. And I think that's with a lot of the plain vanilla options that have been put out there in the last decade. Do you really want to be in this upper mid-scale branded chain environment? Are you there because of a desire, or are you there because of a point system and I think if you travel less, the point system becomes less important and you're making more conscious choices. So I absolutely agree with you. And there's actually one thing I want to add to it, is if you look at a lot of people, what they've done during the pandemic, they moved further away from their offices. So I think the Amsterdam, London, 2 times a week, might give in a little bit. But if then people live 3 hours away from the office and they choose to go for 3 days a week to the office, they all of a sudden need a hotel room. So that's going to be a complete new demand. People that normally sit in a car in a traffic jam and commute to work, that are now all of a sudden for 2 or 3 days a week in the city to visit the office and need a hotel room. So that's a complete new demand, which I think is going to be more price sensitive, because the company might not pick that up and say, well, you chose to live not in New York or in Amsterdam, but in a suburb 3 hours away. That's fine. It's going to reduce your cost of living. But if you come here, then you pay for the hotel room yourself.
It's quite interesting. I was talking to somebody this week in one of the big tech companies who used to be based out of Dublin, and they're currently based out of South Africa, because basically the tech company said to them, we don't want you in the office, and we don't want you in the office for at least the next 6 months. So you can go and work wherever you want to, and the cost of renting somewhere nice in South Africa is a lot less than the cost of renting somewhere nice in Dublin. Now that's a bit of a commute, but you're seeing that you're definitely seeing it in France, you're seeing it in the UK and so on. Rather than being based in the big cities, they're moving out to the countryside. And just like you said, maybe they come into the office 1 day per week or 2 days per month or something like that. I remember one of the first times I met you, Leonard, when I visited your offices, you had a rule which was everybody has to be in the office on a Monday or something like that.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure if it was a written rule, but we kind of, because everybody was traveling so much, and we're such an integrated company where you have all the different functions that are making it together. We've kind of made an agreement that travel is on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the Monday, Tuesdays we reserve for, let's say, internal meetings and people just also informally meeting each other in the office. Otherwise, you're just a traveling circus, and you don't know who you see when.
But when I was listening to this guy, I was really thinking about one of the initiatives that you guys launched last year, which was the subscription idea. And could you explain a little bit more about that? And what's your impression? Do you think you guys will continue with that as occupancy starts to pick up? Or was that just kind of a stopgap measure to deal with the COVID situation?
No, it's something that we've been working on for quite some time. And I think we will continue with the fact that we want to do business with somebody on a brand level, right? So we want to get somebody, and we want Peter to commit to Citizen M, and then the subscription could be all kinds of shapes and forms. So, the subscription that we've chosen last year, when we didn't know there was going to be a second and a third wave lockdown, was a global passport. That was, I would say, really to capture people. Occupancies are low. For $1,500 a month, visit any Citizen M that you like with a minimum stay of 7 nights. So the costs are minimal. You can freely move around, and we caught quite some tailwind on that. So we've literally sold, I think it's over 15,000 room nights the last time I checked. And in some hotels, it was really a base of 50, 60 rooms, that were occupied by these people. But it was more local than we thought, because we thought that people could still work from anywhere. So work a week from Paris, then a month from Amsterdam, then move to New York. Yeah, and then, of course, the travel restrictions never lifted and things got worse. So that was a good, I would say, band-aid on low hotel occupancy. But we are revamping it, and it is something in the end for people that want to live this lifestyle. We wouldn't mind at all to have a little bit of base business from after travel restrictions, are removed from an audience like that, because it's a very captive audience. It's lower distribution cost, and they might use you for anything else going forward. That other subscription was a corporate subscription, which was a 3 nights a month, including some meeting rooms, including working from the hotel, and it's really targeted companies smaller companies that have gone remote and say, you know what, we still need a place, right? So I think one of the main media companies like Skift, they closed their offices. They said, but we no longer need an office. We're fully distributed. But what do you do then when you want to meet, or when do you have a dinner in the city with the team? You still need some kind of relationship with a hotel, and rather than having a discounted bar, we thought, how about if we make a deal on a personal level where we say, you know what, person A from company B has a subscription and it includes, these elements. And for us, it's just a start of, I would say, what we call our loyalty pyramid, where we don't give people a free card, that you give them a night audit, you subscribe them, whether they like it or not, and then they're part of your program. There's no reciprocity in that. And we really believe that it goes both ways. You commit to Citizen M, we commit to you. And then, when the occupancies go up, to be honest, and that's the exciting bit about the subscription with a perishable product, I don't care so much, because for us, we're in it for the long run, right? So for us, it's more about customer lifetime value and user growth than it is about what was the occupancy yesterday in all of our hotels and the ADR. I'd rather optimize customer lifetime value, so people that are using us a lot, than that I sell, my hotel rooms in a certain property to the doctors that are there once a year for a conference.
Yeah, I remember at one stage something you said to me, which I've heard quite a lot, particularly in the restaurant industry. And you talked about the fact that if you could get people to try the Citizen M product, there's going to be a certain percentage of them that won't like it and they will never come back. But if you can get somebody to try it, you can get them to come back once or twice, they will buy into the concept, they will buy into the product, and they will come back again and again and again. And I think that is very, very true. And it's not something that many hotels actually focus on. They focus on trying to get people in the door rather than trying to get people who've been in the door back again and again and again. Usually the way they try and get them back is using a loyalty program, as you said, with points. I'm famous for this line. I'm sorry, it's true. I'm a member of 118 different hotel loyalty programs, none of which make me loyal. So it's a different ball game there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Maybe n is 1 is not n equals 1 is not always let's say the right way to say how it is, because I think there's a lot of value for the hotel chains in the loyalty programs, because there are a lot of people that are, and I've spoken to them. When we roll out to new hotels in new cities, then you can't stay at your own hotel, so you stay at competition. And I remember I was I was doing some work in an American city and an American chain hotel. I'm not going to tell you which one it was, but I was, typically with Americans, they're very chatty at the bar, right? So we're talking about, what do you do? So, well, I'm in hotel business. I work for hotel companies. Oh, what hotel company? Is it Citizen M? Oh, I've never heard of it. So yeah, we're just opening a hotel down the block. So, oh, fantastic. Can you show me? And so I was doing actually Citizen M presentation for, I think it was 4 American business guests, and they all loved it. They said, wow, fantastic. Look at that living room. And, the rooms, it's so cool. And the technology. And can you operate everything through the app? Yeah, you can. Fantastic. Is it part of the loyalty program? I said, no, it's not. So, okay, well, then we won't use it.
Yeah, but you're dealing with this, what I think is a small subsection of the population. Those guys are the frequent business travelers. And if that's the target for your hotel, then definitely that is a very interesting segment, because they pay relatively good rates. They spend lots of money in the bar buying drinks from Lennert. They do spend quite a lot of money, and they are driven by that loyalty program. But the vast majority of customers will never build up enough points to get any kind of status or to get any kind of reward. So I'm very skeptical. Now, I think the loyalty programs are very valuable for the hotel chains as well, but they're very valuable for the hotel chains because they give the business development people something to talk about to the owners. Hey, we've got 1 million people in our loyalty program, and all of these guys, when they come to your hotel, they pay a higher rate and they come more often and so on. It's a very, very convincing argument. And that's why the hotel chains, I remember a couple of years ago, there was this whole Book Direct campaign where different hotel companies, large hotel companies in particular, were giving people instant discounts to become members of their loyalty program. That works very, very well to pump up your numbers, but I'm not convinced that, I'm going to say any, maybe many of those people ever came back without getting that subsequent discount again. So, very, very, very price driven.
Yeah, I'm with you. In the end, I think experience counts, and I'm fully confident that, we spent a lot of money at the experience, and that has its return, and that we can see that in pre-COVID return repeat rates, people talking about it, advocating it, and then you just know that there's a future in it. There's any investor going into no company will want to look at the NPS score of the company to understand the security of the revenue.
Let's go back, Lennert, and talk a little bit more about the effect of COVID, particularly on distribution. One of the things that I've been told by many hotel companies is that they've seen a significant increase in the amount of bookings that are flowing directly, both direct to their own websites and also even direct to property as a result of COVID. Because obviously the customer is insecure, they're contacting the properties in order to find out information. Maybe some of them got burnt by cancellation policies with OTAs and so on. Now, that was last year. Interestingly, what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing definitely that momentum has slowed or maybe even stopped. And I'm just wondering, what's your opinion? Do you think, do you think that what I would say, the kind of the influence of the OTAs that has been growing constantly for the last decade, do you think that's been reduced a little bit by COVID?
Well, I think you're spot on by saying that the people that were traveling last year, they're probably looking for a little bit more security, and they kind of know that if you're dealing with a hotel and you book through one of the OTAs and you have a problem, you want to cancel, you want to take one phone call out of the equation. And I think that indeed, if everything goes through one big pipe, then if turbulence hits it, then the waiting lines are going to be immense. And at Citizen M, when we were dealing with a massive amount of cancellations, I think the maximum amount that people had to wait at some point was maybe 2-3 hours for a reply, instead of a minute that we're normally trying to turn around calls. And we were absolutely flexible with everything. We were just empathetic for situations. We let people out of their prepaid rates, non-refundables, before the OTA started doing that on behalf of the industry. And I think a lot of people got burned, not just by the standpoint, but also the massive queues. And they understand that the best customer service, and that's something that we started advocating, the best customer service you get when you book direct. Because we can deal with you directly. We don't have anybody else to call. You don't have anybody else to call. We're on chat. You call us. You dial 5 for WhatsApp. You get return to a WhatsApp conversation, and we deal with you straight away, 24/7. So I think that was initially when people have a lot of questions like, do I need to get a PCR test before I get into your hotel? Can you help me, get a test appointment on the way out? That led to a lot of direct bookings. I think the other factor, and that might be actually a little bit more sustainable, I think people got a lot more conscious. They got a lot more empathetic for businesses and not for platforms. If you look at the popularity of big tech platforms, think about Amazon, how much negativity it's gotten over the last 2 years, and then think about your bakery around the corner, or your fashion shop, the single business owner. So I think there's been some in other industries, especially for restaurants, for takeaway platforms. Restaurants all of a sudden set up payment through WhatsApp, and this direct relationship and handwriting stuff on boxes with food they delivered, and they got so much sympathy. And so I think that sympathy factor and the consciousness of who plays what role as well in hotel distribution might take a bit longer. But I do see indeed that when the volume comes back and friction is removed, then of course people are going to go back to their old habits, and they will be using OTAs a little bit more again than booking direct. But we've seen absolutely the same. At the same time, we've also been investing heavily in people, in tools and technology in the direct domain over the last year. So it's difficult to say whether that direct booking increase. We've literally seen direct bookings increases in properties between 50 and 100%. Over the last year. So it's difficult to say, is it because people don't trust the OTAs, or are we just doing a good job in conversion? Is it because we offer a really good deal on our website? It's difficult to say why, but I fully agree.
Unfortunately, I think, Leonard, that people have got short memories. And yes, they've had a lot of time on their hands, particularly if they've been in lockdown. And as you said, they've become sympathetic and so on. But I think that, and this is my opinion, as people go back to their normal lives, that convenience factor is going to kick in again. And what hotels and hotel chains need to do if they want to continue that direct relationship with their customers and potential customers is significantly upgrade themselves in terms of convenience and in terms of reducing the friction to actually find their properties and make reservations. And I mean, I'm not traveling as much as I used to right now, but I just, particularly here in Australia, where I think the market's a little bit behind, probably about somewhere between 5 to 8 years behind. When you try to book a hotel, if you try to book with the hotel, it's almost at the stage for many hotels that you have to call between 11 and 2 in the afternoon in their local time zone, because their websites are so bad, because the payment gateway doesn't work. I mean, they just haven't got the basics. And unfortunately, outside of the major chains and guys like yourselves who are quite switched on, even some of the mid-level chains, it's the user experience when you're trying to make a reservation is really, really bad. And that's something that the OTAs have got down really good. And also companies like, for example, like Airbnb. One of the reasons I'm convinced that Airbnb is doing so well is because they make it so easy for you to actually make that reservation. Yeah,
no, I agree, Peter, that it's about the convenience and making it easy. And I think also the proposition, what do you put in front of customers? Because in the end, if you are able to give people a good deal when they book on your site, and then of course you have to be carefully weighing that off with biting the hand that feeds you, right? If you don't deploy any activities yourself and you're just there on the website saying, well, get 10% lower pricing if you book here, and you have nothing else to add, you're not buying your own traffic, then you're going to be punished on the OTA ranking when you start doing that, right? Automatically, because there's less conversions on Booking.com or Expedia. So it's a short game. But the combination of having a little bit of e-commerce efforts, and I think the role that Google plays there is important, and a good proposition and making it frictionless, then you still, I think, can chew off a little bit of that OTA share.
Yeah, you mentioned Google there, which I think is really interesting because we've been talking about Google getting into the travel business for probably a decade, and they've dipped their toes in various ways, and they've become more and more involved. Now, I think it's really interesting that with Google Hotel Ads, I mean, I'm struggling to see a difference now between distributing through Google Hotel Ads and distributing through an OTA. To me, it's effectively the same thing. Am I wrong?
No, and I've always been looking at it that way. I've always had a opinion on the whole distribution landscape. In the end, there's all kinds of players, and we like to put them in a box, and we call Google advertising or meta search, and TripAdvisor is a review platform. It's meta search, and Skyscanner and Facebook to that extent is a display network or a social advertising platform. But I don't care in the end what it is. In the end, it's people that are looking for a hotel, and either they're looking for a hotel in the city or they're looking for you, right? And this is where you need to choose what do you spend where wisely. And so I know plenty of hotels that would spend an enormous amount of advertising money on a display advertising platform, and if you really calculate it down to reservations minus cancellations, and you make a distribution cost percentage, it's much more expensive than getting that reservation risk-free from an OTA. And that's probably because you don't stand out enough, right? So your mix is that you're dependent on people looking for a hotel in London, and you're waiting for an OTA to feed you that reservation. You need more people looking for you. You need to spend more money at the top of the funnel, making sure that people know about you and that you move out of this red ocean. Because if you're in this red ocean, whether it's Google, Facebook, Skyscanner, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, or Expedia, it's all fight. And you just choose how much money you throw at it. But don't be mistaken that Google is not a free lunch. That can be way more expensive than, and of course with their hotel ads program, it's risk-free, right? So you're only spending a commission when you get a booking. And I think that actually terrifies the OTAs, if I'm honest. Because the only job that the OTAs do well at the moment is people look for something and they have something. But isn't Google an awful lot better at finding the right information for you in general? Why would you do a good job in hotels? And if there's no other role that OTAs play, and I know you've been rattling the cage of the hotel chains, right? Well, are you not just an OTA if the only role that you play is provide distribution, right? Your competition is Booking.com, Mr. Marriott or Mr. Hilton. Then it's the same for the OTAs with Google. If your only job is to get somebody that needs a hotel and you give them the hotel, then Google can really easily interfere with that.
No, I fully agree with you. And in fact, one of the things that I won't say it worries me, but one of the things that I'm thinking a lot about right now is, we have these extremely large OTA platforms that have multiple brands and which dominate around the world. And that latest development from Google in the hotel space, which let's face it, that's really where they make their money, because that's where the OTAs are getting relatively high commission levels and relatively high volume. They don't make much from airline. They don't make much from car hire. They don't make much from anything else in travel. So, this development from Google, assuming it gets consumer acceptance, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't get consumer acceptance, it's going to really, really challenge their business model. And we trust Google with so many different things. The only challenge that Google has had has been access to supply, because in the OTA space, the more hotels, the more rooms you have, the more opportunities you have to sell, and the better. Now, Google did a very, very smart, and I actually thought it was a really dumb idea at the time, I will fully admit it. They did a really smart thing during COVID, which was they said, you can join Google Hotel Ads for free. So basically, a lot of hotels signed up, even though they don't actually pay to advertise on the platform. But what has that done? It's given Google a relationship with the hotels so they can get access to supply. Now, if they can scale that, and if they can get the same level of supply that the OTAs have, the big OTAs, I really question if they're going to be as successful as they have been in the future. And maybe that's the reason that maybe it's part of the motivation that companies like TripAdvisor have for trying a new, different business model, a new customer proposition. They've kind of struggled over the years with getting a revenue model which works. Now they tried this discount club idea. Now apparently it's gone to a cashback idea. So do you think we're going to see more of that? Do you think that the OTAs will change their business model?
Well, if you remember pre-COVID, I think the biggest thing in the earning calls of the OTAs was that they were scaling down their spend on Google, and everybody was talking about the fact that Airbnb doesn't spend anything on Google. You just go to Airbnb. So, and why is that? What does Airbnb have different than the OTAs? Well, Airbnb, of course, started with alternative supply, but after the acquisition of Hotel Tonight, I know they're also rapidly integrating hotels, and there's not much need maybe at the moment, but they'll be scaling that up again. But there's something else in that relationship with Airbnb, and that's the security, both from a hotel perspective. So from a guest perspective, I mean, I'm renting a place for Airbnb. If somebody destroys my place, I know Airbnb is going to pay me. But also vice versa. Airbnb is there for you as a guest when the host screws up, right? And that's not something that the OTAs typically have done well. But then if you look at Google, what is it that Google, does not want to do, or what keeps them a little bit shy? And I think that's what they're figuring out at the moment, how to get paid, right? It's easier to send Booking.com one bill for the quarter than it is to send this entire fragmented landscape of hotels bills for the Google ads. But they're fixing that, and that's just like a mountain they're climbing. And the other part is customer service. And I think that this is where the hotel industry has a chance, right? If we can deliver our own customer service, if we can be there to deliver service to people, I mean, yeah, that's what hotels are for, right? Then, yeah, you no longer have this middleman on the phone. If you need something, if you need to change something, if this whole notion of this free-legged relationship can go if Google starts scaling up this. So yeah, I think and TripAdvisor is smart because they're trying a new proposition. They're trying to lock people in, exactly like what we're trying to do with our subscriptions, and that is moving people away from the red ocean of checking all the different sites. No, you just go to TripAdvisor and they got it done for you. And the fact that there's so much pushback on from the hotel chains, from what I've read on the discounting versus cashback, I find it a bit odd, but maybe I just don't understand it. We've been fighting for, being able to quote a discounted price at our own site for years, and now somebody else is doing it, and we have a problem with that. OTAs are doing it. Booking.com has their Genius program, and you don't need to be a genius to be in the program. They're just giving you a discount, and same with Expedia. So, but I think in the end, having these type of propositions is going to help a company like TripAdvisor. But yeah, watch the space for Google, because this whole thing is becoming less frictionful very fast.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is likely to happen shortly is that, right now we have Expedia, we have Booking, we have Airbnb, I suppose, is in the space as well. And now we have Google moving into the space. That's still only 4 or 5 companies, and they're very, very big companies. And obviously we're seeing, there's various developments, antitrust developments in Europe and various antitrust developments in the US, where, the regulatory authorities are really looking at these companies and seeing how they're actually trying to compete. So my feeling is I think we're going to get some other companies entering the space. For quite a while, I've been looking at the Chinese market, and definitely, I mean, what we used to call Ctrip, now called Trip.com, outside of China, that's emerging as another player. Or maybe it will be Alibaba jumping out and getting into travel. Maybe it will be Amazon getting into travel. But I think there's space there for another couple of players, which will increase choice for the customer and also increase choice for the hotel, and allow them to have different options to actually distribute their product.
Well, I hope so. I'm not sure if it's one of the big players, because you've always, in any industry throughout time, you see this consolidation and deconsolidation. So it could also be that we're done consolidating, and that, yes, you might see more of Airbnb, more of Google, and then there might be niche players, right? I think it's really consumer depending. If you look at the consumer market, I think there's a move away from big consolidated players into more local and more direct, and more conscious. So there could be a big space opening up for people that are really particular. So I really want to only stay in hotels that are good for the environment, or I want to stay in hotels that have the best linen. And of course, that can also be taken up by a sorting mechanism on a big OTA. But I think people want to associate themselves more with smaller companies than with big companies. And that, if consumers want that, then that gives a space for smaller companies again. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said it. So any company that doesn't have the skill of a Booking.com or Expedia is not going to survive, because you just simply do not outspend their marketing. But I think going forward, there might be a chance for some smaller niche guys.
Talking about marketing, we mentioned this point earlier. Do you think that the Expedias and the Bookings of this world are going to ramp up their online marketing spend again? Because one of the things, I mean, I've done a lot of research on pay-per-click advertising and things like that in travel. And every time I do a search right now, obviously because travel is restricted by COVID, but I've been amazed about the lack of PPC for travel in general. And obviously, as you said, the OTAs announced that they were massively decreasing their budgets. But that was kind of their key customer acquisition methodology before. As travel ramps back up, aren't they going to have to increase that spend again? Because if they don't increase that spend, they aren't going to have traffic.
I don't know if they have the money to do so, but I think there's two things. There's a strategic element, right? And the strategic element is probably to get more people to to book direct on their app and on their through email marketing. They have a big database, both of the OTAs, so they can really start motivating people first to start to travel again, right? And I see quite a little bit landing in my inbox from both of them. And they're really turned on. If you use their app, straight away you get an email, and they really want you to book there. So the strategy has been, let's focus a little bit more on this traffic that we already have, rather than acquiring traffic on Google that we already have anyway. But on top of it, I think it's just a PPC mechanism, right? If you can make €100 for a one night or £100 for a one night stay in London, you cannot spend as much on Google as if people are spending £200 for a 3-night stay. That's £600 with a commission on it of 15%. That's £100 in commission rather than £15. So I think it's also a pure mechanism. The moment that there's more demand, that the prices will go up and that the length of stays will increase, you will automatically see more marketing activities happen. And that's
but won't all the kind of changes in privacy though have a big effect on how effectively we're able to do that marketing? Because if you take some of the large e-commerce companies, be they in travel or whatever, normally the way it works is you go visit their website and you don't buy, and they retarget you on Facebook or some other website, and they send you a follow-up email and so on. With these changing privacy technologies and changing privacy regulations, it's going to be much harder for them to actually do that.
I think it impacts a little bit maybe the retargeting possibilities, but I mean, don't be mistaken. In the end, these companies make money from advertising, so there must be a way that companies that want to advertise can throw money at them. So I fully agree. I mean, if you look at the GDPR in Europe and getting consent of people for profiling and marketing, has that reduced databases? Absolutely. Has it stopped that companies are trying to do a basket abandonment program or retargeting? Absolutely not. But I think it's with anything new. When we first got text messages on the phone, the people started abusing it for sending promotions. Well, you find out it doesn't really work. People find it's annoying. So at some point you got to become smarter than that. But also the technology is there for you to become smarter. I mean, I remember talking with our e-commerce guy that I hired a year and a half ago when we went into COVID. And he's a very smart guy. And I said, I'm really worried about this cookie things. Yeah, cookies are stupid anyway, right? It was supposed to go already a long time. And we shouldn't be cookie based. We're not going to have issues with that. So, okay, well, I trust you on that. There's many more ways that you can get people in the end interacting with you or coming back to you after they visit your site than just cookies. So I don't think it's the biggest concern we have. And in the end, Google will want our money, right?
Okay, so it's not the biggest concern we have. I'm going to ask you an off-the-cuff question, Leonard. What keeps you awake at night in the distribution arena? What worries you? Either personally, professionally, for the industry. What do you think is the big unknown that's out there that you're spending a lot of mental effort trying to actually figure out?
Well, I think it's the question that we started with, like, what will come back and what doesn't. We have an opinion about it. We can create a hypothesis around it, but we can only validate it in a few years. So I would say my biggest concern is making sure that we grow beyond what we normally do, right? So we have to be smarter in what we do every day. If I look at it shorter term, my biggest concern is that, and I said it actually for next year, for our, let's say our budgeting season, no news is bad news. We really need some good news on travel restrictions and companies. And when are we going to be done with this? When are we going to accept that, COVID is part of the list of diseases? We don't call it pandemic anymore. We don't lock ourselves up in our home. Everybody was able to get vaccinated. Can we please, if we can all go to a Yankee stadium or go to a supermarket at the same time, can we also get on a plane, please, and start, just resuming our normal life? And that for me is the biggest concern, because logically, for me, that has already happened. But it still needs to happen, right? The governments also need to agree. And I think there's still 538 travel restrictions in place where there were only 3 before COVID. And that's really what I hope that, goes very soon.
Okay, so just to finish things off, Leonard, you've kind of mentioned this, I think, but I was going to say professionally, what's your big wish for 2022? How about personally, what's your big wish for 2022? What would you like to see happen on a personal, professional basis?
Well, yeah, professionally, I think I've already said it. I wish in 2022 that people can freely cross borders, that we don't have to prove our health anymore, that we've put this behind us. But I think also personally, I really hope for that, because it's something that, I personally have struggled with after 2 weeks going into the pandemic, understanding, things like fatality rate and stuff like that. I personally really hope that we're going to be nice to each other. And you see this whole polarization. It was very political up front. When we went to COVID, it was really in America. Everything was divided, and now COVID is dividing people. And I hope that in 2022 we can put an end to that. How about you, Peter?
I think for me, both personally and professionally, I mean, it's very, very similar. Both of us work in the travel industry, particularly in the hotel segment. I love to travel. I love to travel for business. I love to travel for pleasure. And that's something that's been severely limited over the last year and a half. Not that I don't love spending time with my kids and my wife and family and so on, but both from the point of view of the industry as a whole and on a personal level, I really want to see things open up. I want to see people being able to travel, to enjoy tourism, to interconnect with people. Events like this, being able to talk with Leonard here on the internet is great, but I would much prefer to be in that bar, in that American city, at the bar, having a beer with him, rather than talking to him over a camera. So
Wow.
my wish is that we get things going again and that we see each other in person as soon as possible. Thank you very much, Leonard, for participating today. We're going to wrap things up now. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, Peter.